all the distinguished speakers and participants in the third Symposium of Women Farmers in India, being organized jointly by the Norwegian University and the World Food Programme in India. Excited to begin today's deliberations that promise to be innovative, insightful, and thought-provoking, seeking to unpack the role of women farmers in building climate resilience in India. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping announcements. There is drinking water outside, there are washrooms on this end. I would request all of you to kindly put your mobiles on silent mode. If there is a call that you really need to take, do please step out. There are QR codes to access the Wi-Fi and also to access the symposium concept note, agenda, and bio profiles of the speakers. I will keep the background of the speakers very short here for keeping purposes. So to begin with today's program, I would like to invite Ms. Lynn Benjaminson, Counselor and Head of the Economic Team, Norwegian Embassy, to deliver the welcome note. Ms. Benjaminson is originally a lawyer by profession and she joined the Norwegian Foreign Service in 2017. She joined the embassy in 2024. Lynn, please.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this third and final symposium, which is a joint effort between the Norwegian Embassy and the World Food Programme here in India. Today, we want to honor, reflect, and focus on the invaluable role that women play in shaping a climate-resilient agricultural landscape here in India. We know that women play key roles in food production chain, from farming and production through processing and sales to cooking and distribution in households. Women's expertise, whether it's using resilient seeds, water conservation techniques, or natural farming practices, is central to food security within their families and their communities. Nevertheless, women's role in the value chain is less recognized than that of men. This may be the result of cultural norms and practices or of laws and regulations. And it means that we need to focus specifically on women's roles and capacities, not only on agricultural and food security as such. An important part of the backdrop is, of course, climate change. Climate change is no longer a distant concern. Many of us see it, we feel it, we experience it, and for others, their lives are directly affected by it. And for those whose source of income, livelihoods, and access to food depend on weather patterns and increasingly unstable climates, we need to find resilient solutions. As I think we will hear more about from the panelists here today, who are much more knowledgeable in this than I am, women farmers stand out as one of the groups that are most affected by climate change, having difficulties accessing the right resources and recognition. At the same time, women are also among the most important agents of change. Ensuring food security is a key priority in the Norwegian government foreign policy and development policy. Many of the Norwegian initiatives within food security focus specifically on strengthening women's roles and their rights when it comes to food production. We are very proud to build on a global partnership with the World Food Programme when it comes to food security, where we are working together to enhance climate adaptation of vulnerable communities and improve their capacities to become climate resilient. India, the seventh most vulnerable country to climate change in the world, faces agricultural challenges consistently. In one of our focus areas, Assam, people rely heavily on agriculture, but face significant challenges because they need to navigate between excessive rainfall, but also drought-like conditions. Through our joint efforts with the World Food Programme, it's very encouraging to see smallholder farmers, especially women, mobilize and share their knowledge through self-help groups. In the two previous symposiums, I know that I wasn't part of it, unfortunately, but I know you had insightful discussions on different aspects of women's roles in agriculture. From the position in the value chain, access to land, inputs, training, and government schemes. I would like to already at the outset thank our esteemed panel and all the participants here today for joining us in this conversation on how to take forward the dialogue of strengthening women's role in driving climate resilient agriculture in
Thank you, Lynn. I would now like to share with the participants a short video that offers a glimpse of the previous two symposia that Lynn just referred to. Can I request for the video to be played? And now I would like to invite Ms. Nozumi Hashimoto, Deputy Country Director, World Food Program India, to deliver the introductory remarks. Ms. Hashimoto, a Japanese national, has a master's degree in international relations from Columbia University, with more than 16 years of development and humanitarian experience in Africa and Asia. Nozumi.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to this symposium today. Very nice to meet you all. Some of you have been here the last year, the two symposiums, and when I started to feel like this meeting room has become a little home of our gatherings. So thank you very much once again to the Norwegian Embassy to always warmly host our events. And then for those who are joining the first time, welcome to the family. Thank you very much. This is really meant to be a relatively small and more unofficial but open area where we can, openly discuss and share the best practices, and then together think about what can be done to elevate the status of women farmers in the context of India. My role today is to really recap a little bit of what has been done in the previous two symposia. So let me just inform you, especially for those who have not been here, but also for those who have been here but a little bit a while ago, so the memory might be a little bit vague. The first symposia, as the video mentioned, was end of April last year. The theme was the role of women in the agriculture value chain, and we started to look into the challenges, but also we heard a very extensive list of interventions that the government has been implementing. The discussion was really like, so what is already considered and has been done? What is still missing? What needs to be done? A lot of thinking about the empowerment around it was there. We talked about there is no one single intervention that can make the difference, but there has to be a very coherent and a holistic approach. We definitely mentioned about the capacity gap, awareness gap, but it has to be complemented with enabling environment for women to be able to get access to the key inputs. Finance was one that was mentioned, the other was the land access. So those are really how we can holistically support women. And then the third big element that came up in the second symposium as well is that how it is important to have the collective approach in a way women in the group. So they have the role models, they have the mutual peer support system there, and then the people can be empowered and they can feel like they have the strength to step into the new areas that they haven't experienced before. So all these things were emerging from the first symposium. The second symposium, we felt like we have to zoom in a little bit further to look into the access issues specifically. The access issue, I mean, there are many things to access to. The land is one thing, finance has been another one thing. We also looked into the technology, both in terms of modern technology, but also the green technologies. But we also wanted to approach this access question from the social norms and the barriers perspectives. What are the cultural and social norms that has been the challenge that women has been, facing? And for us, I feel like for the first and the second as well, but to hear directly the testimonials from some of the successful women farmers was quite eye-opening for us to hear. And then some of the, the success stories and how women have managed to go through the process and how they gain their husband's support and agreement, and how the economic power empowerment has changed their status and the perception around the community members. Those were really highlighted in the second symposium. The third symposium, which is today, as already introduced, is going to look into specifically the climate change and women's role in the climate change. I'm not going to speak that much. As you mentioned, we have a group of specialized experts on this agenda, but I really hope that towards the end of this Symposia Series, we can have some understanding and mutual learning that can come together with us. So without much ado, I propose we can start the real discussion. Thank you very much once again for coming, and looking forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to invite Professor Vidya Vemirati, please. Professor Vidya Vemirati, her presentation will set the context for the technical discussion in this symposium. She is a faculty at the Center for Management in Agriculture, Indian Institute of Management, Hyderabad. She currently chairs the Gender Center at IIMP and has led several research grants on gender and agriculture. The floor is yours.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and first of all, I'm truly honored to be here among the distinguished guests and panelists and all the participants. And I'm also very happy to learn that, two symposiums have been conducted in this, and the partnership is very timely, and I appreciate this work. What I'll be doing today is sort of, a lot of things have been mentioned in terms of what happened in the first symposium and the second one. But I will be talking about more data, research, and the context around that, and what needs to be done further to enhance that effort to inform policy decisions. Right? If we talk about this, we already know that there is impacts on everybody, but what's very important to note from research point of view that the impacts are not equal on everybody. Like, they're not evenly felt by everybody, and social norms and various cultural barriers, as well as the occupation, geography, all these things matter when we talk about vulnerability in climate change, right? One of the main things is the world's poor face these climate issues much harsher, a much harsher way, and obviously women in that take the center stage. And how does that really happen? Like, if we, one can say that women do take are actually facing vulnerabilities, but if you look at the numbers around it, globally, women make up approximately 40% of the agricultural workforce, and two-thirds are employed in South Asia. Okay? And climate change affects all, but women face basically the vulnerabilities that I've been mentioned. And what's adding to this is feminization of agriculture. So we see that in parts of South Asia, and specifically for India, there's out-migration of men. And when specifically climate change hits, the out-migration is much more. And so the burden of the farming actually falls on women. So that makes this dialogue even more critical. That are we enabling those women in any other manner to be more resilient, and are we also helping them cope better? So what do we need in terms of doing that? Now there's an economic case for this also, right? That women farmers produce 20 to 30% less than men due to dual exclusion as smallholders as well as women. And this was an FAO report in 2011, but it was echoed again in 2024 recently. And by women with equal access to resources will boost output, and close to about significant percent of GDP gets affected with that. And there are calculations around that which have been done. I'm not just going to, in India it becomes even more severe because again, 80% of rural women in India are engaged in some or the other agricultural activity. So when I mean agriculture, it encompasses not just production farming, but also fisheries, livestock. And if you take the entire agriculture and light sector, it's 80% women. Some of them are laborers, and that's where intersectionality matters. Like, we look at whether they're a labor force or whether they're farmers engaged in their own farms. And so there's a dissection in terms of which women are we really talking about, right? Again, they are also doing one very important component when we talk about women is time poverty. So besides taking care of agriculture and shouldering the entire burden of that also, women are also doing domestic work at home, right? So which induces multiple time constraints, which are not true for men largely in rural India. So that's a very critical point, because then the burden is magnified when a climate shock hits. So like I said, there's an economic case. So if equal resource access for women farmers is provided, that could boost productivity by 20 to 30% and eliminate hunger for 150 million people. So there's more research which is supporting this argument now. Besides this, which has already been mentioned in Symposium 1 and 2, that there is limited access to land ownership, credit, availability of information, time, resources. All of these actually limit women to adopt a technology, which is kind of smart also. So that's something that's already studied. Then what do we do about it is the question, right? And just giving some numbers around what is the total number of workers we're talking about. This is a very critical concern. So just to give you an example, a recent study was done in Bihar and Kerala by Sarkar et al. 2024. Now this region experienced flood. So what happens? How does it impact women versus men? So we look at the study looks at married women experienced a dual burden of paid employment and unpaid household labor. As I just mentioned, that the time constraints are more pronounced in the case of women. After the floods, married women in affected districts spend 10 to 12 hours more on unpaid household work in more than affected regions, relative to unaffected regions, right? Married women spend 9.8 to 10.5 extra hours weekly on household chores and their labor. So these were all in the affected regions compared to the unaffected regions of the floods. Women increase their paid labor by 4 to 5.6 hours weekly after floods, spending approximately 7 working hours, 7 hours, etc. So this is a stark difference, but this also gets accentuated in a recent study which I'm doing, looking across India. What we are also finding is wherever there are shocks in rainfall and even drought conditions, we see women actually, even in increased temperatures, we see women's working hours increasing, and that doesn't happen to men. So therefore, the effects of climate change are likely to play much more significant role on women, and that's where we need data to look at that. Now, this is a kind of like we are at a juncture where we have to enhance productivity, yet ensure sustainability, and yet be inclusive. So that's kind of the paradox. And with that, we've come as scientists and policymakers and everybody come to it's quite complex. Everybody says it's complex, it's difficult to solve. But one of the key things that people have highlighted that can be done. These are all challenges getting repeated. I'm just going to go straight into some of the things that can be done. Is first of all, we have a lot of secondary data, right? In the case of India also. So we have systems data, we have climate data available, remote sensing data available. We do know women's empowerment at a district level. So it is easier to identify high-risk areas, right? And look at what can be done and prioritize investments and action accordingly, right? So that's an important data point that one has to consider. Another thing is to improve access to productive resources, and labor-saving technologies become very important given we're talking about time constraints. There's not much effort. Well, there is effort in development of technology, but in terms of adoption of that technology and when we're taking up those technologies, there's still a lot of work needed. Partly that stems from not understanding the design or the needs of women in terms of technology, right? So that's again a research gap. Now, ensuring climate information, digital financial services, we all know are absolutely critical. So because the divide of financial as well as digital is increasing. And it's much more pronounced in rural areas. So, and that's likely to increase further because the growth rates of India are massively growing, and at the same time, the population needs to catch up. So that's a critical area of attention, both in terms of research, data, as well as policy. Collective action, a lot of people speak about that. We already have approximately 9 billion self-help groups in the country, documented. Obviously, they are doing all farm and non-farm activities as part of enterprise. But that shows immense power of collectives in the country and how they can be harnessed. What kind of systems can be built in terms of research and data to strengthen that, as well as provide critical inputs to make sure that enterprises grow much more than what they are today, right? And that's a very powerful medium that India already has that can be harnessed. Women leadership in climate and agriculture policy. Now, this is an area that needs attention because we do talk about women collectives, we do talk about groups, but we don't talk about mentors and leaders. And it's important. I mean, I'm doing a study currently in women agribusiness, and we find that there are no role models. So if there are no role models, girls are not willing to go into certain jobs because they don't look at agriculture as an interesting area. So that's something that needs to be cultivated as we think about it, and it does not limit to only rural settings. It also goes to industry. It goes to corporate agriculture as well in terms of agribusiness. And that's the policy architecture which, and a lot of research still needs to be done in terms of what that leadership can enhance, do, and bring about the change, right? Gender responsive data collection and utilization, this is often said, but very underutilized, not done properly. Whether it's student enrollments, whether it is even looking at, for example, the SAG data, right? There's no way I can use it as of now. So can we build those monitoring frameworks? Can we also collect data, especially for resilience and coping mechanisms, which is disaggregated at the gender level, right? So it's important because that's where I can say what effective targeting can I do for men vis-a-vis women, right? So that's important because we already know that climate is affecting them unequally. So if it's affecting them unequally, to effectively target and provide solutions, we need data and insights in a disaggregated manner. The other thing is, in my research, I found that there is a lot of talk around resilience, but when we actually look at gender responsive frameworks, which brings together resilience in a way which accounts for women's needs, then it's actually a big limitation. So at our institute also, we did that work. We piloted some of the work on resilience at the individual level, which accounts for gender differences and definitely incorporates things like psychology, more interdisciplinary kind of approach in research. And those frameworks are much needed, both in terms of setting what data is required from that and then also what metrics next. And how do we track that? So the entire value chain needs work in terms of going forward. So these are some priority areas which I think I'll take to the table for further discussion. And this is just to summarize what I just said, and I'm happy to engage later. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Venureddy, for laying out not only the challenges that farmers face, but also the key areas where we really need to take action to be able to address those challenges. I think this really takes us very into the panel session now, and to deliberate on all of these areas. I think I would call upon the panelists to kindly come forward. The panel will be moderated by Ms. who leads the climate change at WFP area. Among our panelists are Dr. Redha, who is from the NSSRF or NS Environmental Research Foundation. She has over 30 years of experience as a development researcher and field practitioner. She has been working with MS Swaminathan Research Foundation Chennai in different capacities, and currently she is the Executive Director of Area Operations. We have Dr. Ruchika Singh, who is the Executive Program Director of Food, Land and Water at WRI India, with more than 2 decades of leadership and program experience on environmental and development issues. She provides overall strategic direction on how to inform India's transition towards sustainable food and land use systems. Our panelist is Mr. S.S. Vasiaran, who is the officer in charge of NABARD's Delhi Regional Office. He has a long experience in NABARD and having joined it in 1999 and has worked in diverse areas, including watershed development, rural infrastructure development, investment credit, farm sector development, and farmer producer organizations, credit planning, and refinance and administration. Last but not the least, I would like to invite Ms. Govinda, who is a woman farmer who has joined us today. She will talk to us about her story, her struggles, and her journey towards empowerment. Ms. Govindamma is a small farmer from Pattu village in Vilupuram district and a shareholder of Nellagoodu Farmer Producer Company Limited. She cultivates paddy, groundnut and background and is also a manager and operator of the pulse processing unit at the FPO. She will speak in Tamil and Dr. Engelashmi will translate her story in English for the benefit of the audience. I would like to begin with the story of Ms. Govindamma.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். நான் நல்லா விவசாயம் பற்றி அர்த்தம் பண்ணியிருக்கேன். என் பேர் கோவிந்தம். நான் கடந்த 10 ஆண்டுகளுக்கு முன்பாக விவசாயத்தில் தான் சேர்ந்தது. விவசாய பயிர் இருந்திருக்கேன். அந்த விவசாய பயிர் அதுக்கு முன்னே மானவட்டா பூமியெல்லாம் பயிரிட்டு இருப்போம். அதில் லாபம் வரும், வராது. மழை பெய்ஞ்சாலும் எங்களுக்கு ஈடு கிடைக்கும். மழை பெய்யறதா சுத்தமா பயிர் காஞ்சி போயிடும். அது பிறகு நாங்கள் கிணறு எடுத்து தண்ணி வந்தது. கிணறு எடுத்து தண்ணி வந்த பிறகு பயிர் பருத்து 3 பாகம் பயிர் இருக்கும். 3 பாகம் நெல், மணிலா, உளுந்து இதெல்லாமே நாங்கள் பயிர் வைப்போம். பயிரில் எங்களுக்கு ஆர்வமா பயிர் வச்சு வைப்போம். அப்பப்போ மாற்றி 3 பாகம் பயிர் இருக்கும். பயிர் வைக்கிறப்ப மழை பெய்யறதாலும் பரவாயில்ல, கிணத்துல தண்ணி இருக்குது, அதை நம்பி பயிர் வச்சா நம்ம பிள்ளைங்களை படிக்க வைக்கலாம், நம்ம வாழ்க்கையில முன்னேறலாம்னு நாங்கள் விவசாயத்துல ஆர்வமா பயிர் வச்சுருக்கோம். அதுங்கிறது இப்போ 2 வருஷ காலமா எங்களுக்கு மழை பருவம் மாறி பெய்யறதுனால நெல் நட்டோம். அதுல பூ பூக்கிற தருணத்துல காத்து அடிச்சு சுத்தமா அந்த பூரா உரிமை போயிடுச்சு. அது கிணத்துல பயிர் வைக்கிறப்ப ஏக்கருக்கு 30 மூட்டைக்கு எடுப்பாங்க நெல். இப்போ இந்த மழை பெய்ஞ்சதுனால ஒரு ஏக்கருக்கு 15 மூட்டை தான் பூரா பூவும் உரியும் போயிடுச்சு. நஷ்டம் அடைஞ்சு போயிடுச்சு. அதே மாதிரி மணிலா போட்டோம்னா ஒரு ஏக்கருக்கு 29 இருந்து 31 மூட்டை வரைக்கும் ஈல்டு எடுத்துக்கிட்டேன். எங்களோட விவசாய ஆபீஸ்ல கொடுத்துருக்கேன். இதை நேர்த்தி பண்ணி அவங்களுக்கு தான் கொடுத்துருக்கேன். அவங்க எல்லா விவசாயிக்கும் நாங்க கொடுக்குற வேலை தரமாகவும் இருக்கும். அதுக்கு முன்னே நாங்க பயிர் வச்சோன்னா நஷ்டம் வரும், லாபம் வரும் அப்படின்றத வச்சு பயிர் வைக்க மாட்டோம். நாங்க விவசாயத்துல பெண் விவசாயியா நாங்க முன்னேற்றத்துக்கு வரக்கூடிய காரணம் என்னன்னா, எங்களுடைய அமைச்சர் ஆபீஸ் எங்களுக்கு எந்த விதை போட்டா எப்படி இது நல்லா உங்களுக்கு ஈடு வரும், விவசாயத்துல எப்படி முன்னேறலாம் அப்படின்ட்டு எங்களுக்கு ட்ரைனிங் கற்றுக்கிட்டாங்க. நாங்க அதுக்கு முன்னே அடுப்படியே இதே தொடரணும். அப்ப எங்களுக்கு விவசாயத்தை பத்தி தெரியாது. 10 வருஷமா எங்களுடைய அமைச்சர் ஆபீஸ் வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் எங்களுக்கு ஒரு சுய குழுவா அமைச்சாங்க. அதுக்கப்புறம் போய் ட்ரெயின் போட்டாங்க. ட்ரெயின்ல என்ன விதை நிறுத்தி போட்டா எது நல்லா வரும்னு ட்ரெயின் கற்று கொடுத்தாங்க. எங்களோட ஏரியாவுக்கு உளுந்துல 4, நெல்லில பிபிடி 37 இந்த 2 ரகம் எங்க மண்ணுக்கு நல்லா தரமா விளைஞ்சது, தரமாவும் இருந்தது. அந்த வகையை நாங்க யூஸ் பண்ணிட்டு இருந்தோம். மணிலாக அது முன்னே நாங்க விஆர் மாலை, இந்த சிறப்பு மல்லாட்டு, தங்க மணி ஒரு மல்லாட்டு அதெல்லாம் போட்டு ஈல்டு வராது. இப்போ கிருநார் 4, கிருநார் 5, G7 இது 3 வெரைட்டி எங்க மண்ணுக்கு தரமான மல்லாட்டு நல்லா விளையுது, இதெல்லாம் ஈல்டு வருதுன்னு அந்த ட்ரெயின்ல பார்த்துக்கிட்டு அந்த மணிலாவே வாங்கி நாங்க பயிரிட்டோம். ஒரு ஏக்கருக்கு 29 இருந்து 30 மூட்டை 31 மூட்டை வரைக்கும் நாங்க ஈல்டு எடுத்துருக்கோம். நல்லாவே எங்களுக்கு பயிர்ல லாபம் வரும்போது இந்த 2 வருஷமா தான் எங்களுக்கு காட்டு பண்ணி தொல்லை, மான் தொல்லை, பத்தாயிரத்துக்கு மழை தொல்லை, இது 3ஆலதான் இப்போ விவசாயத்துல கொஞ்சம் இழப்பீடு வருது. அப்படி இழப்பீடு வந்தாலும் விவசாயத்தை நாங்க விட்டு கொடுக்க மாட்டோம். பெண் விவசாயியா நாங்க விவசாயத்துல முன்னேறணும், எங்க வாழ்வாதாரத்துல என் பையனை நல்லா முன்னேறணும், படிக்க வைக்கணும், அவங்க நல்லா இப்படியே இருக்கணும் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு விவசாயத்தை விட்டு கொடுக்காத. இப்பயும் எங்க எஸ்சிஜில 1000 பேர் நம்பர்ஸ் இருக்கும். அதுல பெண் விவசாயி 775 பேர் பெண் விவசாயி. எல்லாருமே நம்ம முன்னோடி விவசாயியா தான் இருக்கோம், யாரும் பின்னோடி விவசாயியாவே இல்லை. அனைத்து பேருமே நான் குரு இருந்தது போல எங்க ஏரியால இருந்த எல்லா பெண் விவசாயமே விவசாயத்துல ஆர்வமா இருக்கும். விவசாயம் வந்து நாங்க பண்றதுக்கு இன்னுமே இருக்கு, இன்னுமே எங்களுக்கு ஆர்வம் இருக்கு, எங்களோட ஆசையும் இருக்கு பயிர் வைக்கணும். இப்போ வந்து இந்த 2 வருஷமா எங்களுக்கு மழையால பனித்தொல்லையால நஷ்டம் வந்தாலும் இன்னமும் பயிர் வரைய விட்டு கொடுக்கூடாதுன்னு இப்ப வீட்டு நடத்தேன். ஒரு ஏக்கருக்கு 30 மூட்டை வரையத்துல 15 மூட்டை ஈடு வந்துருக்குது. அப்படி வந்திருந்தாலும் இப்ப அடுத்த போக நான் பயிர் வைக்கிறாங்க வீட்டுல எல்லாரும் சொல்றாங்க. அப்படி இருந்தாலும் நான் விட்டு கொடுக்க மாட்டேன். இப்ப 37 வேலை வருது, இந்த போக வாங்கலாம் அடுத்த போகத்தை நம்மளுக்கு போய் கூடி வரும் அப்படின்றதுனால நான் இப்ப மறுபடியும் நாட்டங்கால் ஓட்டி இப்ப 3 மூட்டை வேலை விட்டுருக்கேன். இப்ப மறுபடியும் 37 ஈல்டு இப்ப நெல் அதையே மறுபடியும் நட்டு அதை ஈல்டு எடுத்துக்கணும்ன்ற ஆர்வத்தோட நான் நாற்று விட்டு வச்சிருக்கேன். நீங்க வந்து கூட பார்க்கலாம். நான் சொல்றது நேரடியே வந்து எங்க ஏரியாவில் நாங்க பண்ற பெண் விவசாயம் உண்மையான்றத இது எல்லாமே நண்பர்களா வந்து பார்க்கலாம். நாங்க எல்லாமே ஆண்கள் எல்லாம் வேலைக்கு வெளியில போயிடுவாங்க, நாங்க பெண் விவசாயியா ஒருத்தர் வேலையில வேலையா நாங்க போய் செய்வோம், வேலைக்கு வேலையா நீங்க வந்து செய்யணும்னு சொல்லிட்டு நாங்க எல்லாரும் ஒத்துமையா பெண் விவசாயியா பயிரிடுறதுல நாங்க ஆர்வமா இருக்கோம். நாங்க இப்பயும் பயிரிட்டு தான் இருக்கோம். எங்க ஆண்கள்லாம் வந்து வெளியில போய் சம்பாதிச்சு என் கையில கொடுப்பாங்க, அதை வந்து நாங்க பயிர் செலவுல பண்ணுவோம். எல்லாம் பண்றதுக்கு கூட எங்களோட பெண்ணோட விருப்பம் தான். எங்களோட விருப்பத்துக்கு என் வீட்டுல ஆண்கள் எல்லாரும் ஒத்துழைச்சி எங்களுக்கு எல்லாமே நீங்க பண்றது சரி அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு எங்களுக்கு பண்ணி தராங்க. எங்களுக்கு வந்து அது மாதிரிதான் எனக்கு பயிர் வைக்கிறதுக்கு தெரியாமே வரணும். எங்களோட எம்எஸ்ஆர் ஆபீஸ் வந்து எங்களுக்கு பயிர் வழி பத்தி கற்றுக் கொடுத்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் நம்ம பெண் விவசாயத்துல முன்னேற ஆர்வம் எங்களுக்கு நிறையவே இருக்கு. என்னை இந்த அளவுக்கு பேச வச்சு எங்களோட ஆசையம் எங்களோட ஆரோக்கியம் விவசாயத்துல கற்றுக்கிட்ட எங்களோட எம்எஸ்ஆர் ஆபீஸோட நிறுவனம் எங்களோட மேடம் தான் என்னை இந்த அளவுக்கு இந்த இடத்த பேச சொல்லி உங்களோட எல்லாரோட அறிவுகளும் அறிவித்தது உங்களுக்கு வாழ்த்துக்கள்.
Basically, she's a small farmer from one of the villages near Vilupuram. She's from an FPO. Earlier, she was with SLG. And they used to have a rainfed system of farming. In that, they cultivate black gram. When paddy to an extent, then there is a good rainfall is there. But since the rainfall is uncertain and frequently they are getting a loss in farming, they slowly shifted to build the irrigation systems. Because earlier they used to have open wells, they renovated the open wells. So that provided a kind of an assured irrigation. With that, they used to change the cultivation from 1 crop to 3 crops in a year. So it's a kind of an intensive cultivation they practiced over a period of time. They cultivated paddy, groundnut, and black gram. And during that time, facilitation was there, build the capacities, understanding different kind of varieties. They were part of different demonstration trials. So with that, she was able to gain the good practices, good varieties kind of thing. She mentioned 2-3 varieties name. Example, black gram 114 and groundnut Erinar 4-5 as well as G7 varieties. In paddy also so those varieties are highly suitable to that region. These people were involved in the participatory varietal selection, understood the whole profile of the varieties and adopted. And coming to the third area she mentioned is last 2 years they have been facing critical issues due to the rainfall. That is the unseasonal rainfall is the major one. And the second one is the boil areas. So in unseasonal rainfall, because of that, she faced production loss in paddy and groundnut. In paddy, it is up to 50%. In groundnut, it is also more than 50%. Otherwise, they used to get a very good yield. But due to unseasonal rainfall, the crop is facing severe losses. And the capacity building and exposure during the last year supported them to become a kind of a farmer, as a women farmer in that region.
and part of collectives. The collective supported them in accessing some of the resources which are essential for cultivating the field. For example, these varieties are available through the collectives. So that supported them to take it forward in the adoption process. And during the last year, again, she said that the wild animals that became a big problem for them to cultivate in the field. She hasn't mentioned here, but during my conversation during the journey, she mentioned that both men and women in the family, they used to go and stay in the field throughout the whole night because to guard the crop from some of the wild animals. Again, next day they have to follow the routine processes. And here, as she mentioned, the collectives have more than 875 women farmers. All are motivated farmers, and they are each of them are leaders in their own context. And though we have been facing losses, we will continue to lead agriculture. Men are moving out of agriculture to non-farm enterprises or any other work in the nearby region, but still women are now motivated to take up the work. And she's welcoming you all to the field to come and interact with other women farmers also. So men are coming and giving the income to women. Whatever they are earning from outside agriculture, they are bringing it to home. But these people are putting it in investing in agriculture and taking forward the initiative to the next level. She appreciated the support received from men in taking forward the initiative, how women are taking a lead in agriculture. Earlier they used to be a labor. 1 minute, she's
நான் வந்து வீட்டில் வேலை செய்யறதுக்கு போவேன். தரையில் பயிர் இட்டுட்டு நல்லா ஒரு விவசாய உற்பத்தியாளர் இருக்காங்க, ஒரு டைரக்டர் இருக்கு, அவங்க ஆர்கனைசேஷன் சென்டர் இருக்கு. அவங்க வந்து மதிப்பு கூட்ட பொருள் எல்லா மலையாள உளுந்து பாசி பயிர் எல்லாத்தையும் மதிப்பு கூட்டி விற்கிற அளவுக்கு எங்களுக்கு வால்வெடி சென்டர் இருக்கு. அதில் போய் நான் வால்வெடி சென்டரில் வேலை பார்க்குறேன். எல்லா பொருளையும் மதிப்பு கூட்டி எல்லா விவசாயிக்குமே போய் சேர்ற மாதிரி கொடுக்கணும். எங்களோட கம்பெனி நேமுடைய மயிலம் பிராண்டுன்னு சொல்லிட்டு எல்லா விதநேர்த்தியும் நாங்கள் நெல் மண்ணில் எல்லாத்தையுமே விதநேர்த்தி பண்ணி எங்களோட நல்ல ஒரு விவசாய உற்பத்தியாளர் கம்பெனி நேர்ந்து மயிலம் பிராண்டுன்னு போட்டு நாங்கள் விதநேர்த்தி பண்ணி பேக்கிங் பண்ணி கொடுக்குறோம். எங்களோட இந்தியா முழுவதும் எங்களோட விதையை வந்து வாங்கி எல்லா விவசாயம் நல்லா பயனடையணும் என்னோட ஆசை, எங்களோட கம்பெனியோட ஆசீர்வாதம்.
She's a housewife. She did all the house work, the domestic work. Then she moves to the field, complete the field work. Then she get into the professional work, that is manager of a value addition center. They are value adding 3 products: one is groundnut, then black gram, then paddy. So in all these crops, the value addition center is managing and supporting the local farmers and also for the company. And the second area is they are seed producers. So they are producing their own seeds, and the brand name is Milam. That is the nearest city and urban region in that local area, which is very famous in Tamil Nadu context because of the temple. So the name is associated with that. So their wish is those seeds, the Milam brand seed should be available to all the farmers, and it should be a kind of an well recognized across different regions of India.
So thank you so much, Govindaman. I think a couple of years back, I was in Melbourne and we went to KDK. And there was a gathering of more than 300 women farmers at this particular KDK. And I was really surprised to see that everybody was actively asking questions, demanding for the inputs from the KDK and asking for information. And that kind of enthusiasm, confidence I had not really seen anywhere. And Govindamal actually belongs to that FPO, which is a women FPO, and they are doing great work Followed by that, we actually visited the field, and the work they're doing is really, really inspiring. So, having looked at what media presented, which actually set the context, talked about various gaps, and there is an inspirational story from here. I think she really needs a great round of applause. So thank you so much. So,
You have to be a good leader and come up with the kind of colors. Women farmer as well as the company.
so that she's the ambassador. So I think that is something which actually is a note on which we are starting this panel discussion. So actually, just one thing I wanted to highlight. We are talking about how the climate change really exacerbates women's vulnerability. May it be to the climate, the environment itself, the social, as well as the economic, financial vulnerability. So when we are talking about that, we also have seen that lots of intrinsic issues which are underlying, which are there. So maybe land use, maybe access to resources, maybe even the literacy levels. Because we just recently had an assessment done for one of our projects, and it really shows that if the same thing is given, same inputs are given to the women farmers and male farmers, the change which actually happens is lesser among women farmers. That simply indicates the capacity gap, or rather the delivery of the services or delivery of capacity building. So, having said that, we have such an eminent panel who has really spent many years working on these issues of climate and women farming in the larger sense. So I would really like to go first to Dr. Ruchika. And if you can really talk a bit about these vulnerabilities and what really are the challenges in your opinion, and how you, in your experience, are really tackling with it, to what extent you have really found that it is successful, or the challenges will continue, and what are the major inhibitions or major kind of things which obstruct the work. So I'm just mindful we have around 30 minutes, so we can just go through first round and then more specific questions, and then open for the questions. So over to you, Richard.
Thanks, Kavya. First of all, thank you to Norwegian and World Food Program for inviting for this important discussion. And I really appreciate Govinda here being and listening to her inspiring story. It's a fantastic way to start this conversation. Typically, we have these panels, but the most important sort of stakeholder is listening. So I just wanted to start with that. A little bit about WI India and the work we do. We're a research institute, and we are focused on looking at how do we turn big ideas into action at the nexus of economic opportunity and human well-being. The work I lead, we essentially, our focus is on looking at how do we empower India's transition towards sustainable food and land use systems. Why is this difficult? The land sector, we know that because of the climate crisis, and all of us are facing and experiencing some of those impacts, but honestly, I think most of us who are in this room also have a certain kind of privilege. So the vulnerabilities that, and the risk of climate change are going to be very different for vulnerable groups, women. We have to think about intersectionality, which doesn't talk about, it's not talked about so much. Within women as well, when we're talking about issues of caste, class, age, that determine, when we are thinking about vulnerability, what it means in the context of land sector. And when within the program, when we are looking at some of these aspects, we've had our focus is really looking at a circular food systems approach. So, and I'll talk more about the production system and a bit about food loss and waste here, but how do we think about the entire spectrum and then think about solutions that are needed, whether it's on sustainable agriculture, restoration, or reducing food loss and waste. And coming to what we're discussing today, role of farmers, especially women farmers, thinking of that intersectionality lens. I think the issues around both off-farm, non-farm, issues around livelihoods, jobs, and Dr. Vidya, you did a really interesting, important job of setting the table of what it really means. And key issues that really come out is one is, and I think this has been said earlier as well, the role of women, and I think you pointed out as well, the role of women, issues of labor issues, it is even labor. While you're working in your household, but also there is additional work that's happening as part of agricultural labor that gets unrecognized. Land titles was already spoken about. And how we think about strategies when we're thinking about women's role is recognized in terms of the traditional resource management, in terms of, we heard examples in terms of, how we think about better seed management practices or their role in when we think about water management or sustainable agriculture, all of those is known. But from a challenge perspective, what we've seen, a lot of programs, for instance, that are designed on policies, incentives, and I'll take an example from restorations, agroforestry here. A lot of programs sometimes are designed top-down, and if we think about the climate risks that are happening, one question, for instance, is when we are planning for restoration or agroforestry interventions, what is really the priority of women farmers? And that would also differ depending on which caste or class, Dalit or Adivasi farmer, for instance. And some of our learnings from Madhya Pradesh, for instance, is an example, that we've seen is most of the time women, when they are prioritizing, they would talk about, even in trees, food products, fruit, and food is the prioritizing, ecosystem service, while men would still talk about timber. Now, when we are designing these policies or incentives, how do we sort of input into that? And all of this does play a big role, and we're talking about what that from a climate resilience perspective, but also from a mitigation aspect. How are we strengthening some of those aspects? And that's one key takeaway that I'll stop here with. Very biggest challenge, right? I mean, how are we informing, goes to the data question that was raised earlier. Are we developing more data-informed strategies on what those climate resilient practices are, especially for women? I have more examples, but I'll come to that in the next one.
Thank you so much, Ruchika. So the two things which actually really came very strongly in your intervention is like, one is, whether we are really involving women farmers in the planning process. And the second one is about mostly the all prioritization and all is top down. So whether we are really talking about how these strategies can be more informed by the users of it. And so from that angle, I'll straightway go to Dr. Rengalakshmi. So, MSSRF has been working in this field for years at very grassroots level, and then closely with the women farmers on the issues of climate resilience and mitigation, on the issues of conservation, and then taking it to the policy level as well, generating a lot of evidence and lots of research papers. So, Dr. Rengalakshmi, from your perspective, we really like to hear from you. What are the real ground level challenges and how the policy support really can facilitate some of those solutions?
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for the opportunity. And as Ruchika said, we started with the theoretical perspective from Professor Vidya, then actual practice from Govindam. So, from my perspective as well as from foundation's work, and we have been closely working with small and marginal farmers and women farmers across different agro ecologies, starting from hills, semi-arid, as well as the coastal ecosystems. So here, as a technology and science-based organization, we have been closely working with different sets of farmers on production technologies. That was our initial entry point. So in that, when we started our work in early 2000 or late 90s, the optimization or appropriation of the technology itself was a major challenge. So we could able to find out some methodology, how it can be a kind of a participatory process, how it can be co-development and co-innovation, taking to the next level. That was our initial work. Till 2000, still we are continuing that work in many of the aspects. So the technology side, there are many technologies on the production of different crops, cropping systems, intensification. Those are all the aspects now many of the farmers started adopting it. But still there are challenges are coming in, especially from the climate change point of view. And in the recent past, we were able to see change in the weather pattern. That played a major role because for most of the climate change related issue as such, farmers developed some adaptation measures and the system got kind of an next level support services are available. But this sudden occurrence of this unseasonal rainfall or extreme weather events, that places them a kind of a very vulnerable position, especially women farmers when they are taking loan from the bank or either from central groups. It's very difficult for them to get into the next level of investment. So next time, when next season after the last, if they would like to continue agriculture, then they are going to the money lenders. Again, the gap is continuing. Even though the collective action is there, but this is the major problem we have been facing among women farmers. And when we come to the next level of interventions, how this weather-based initiatives or weather-based mitigation services we can bring in. Though insurance services available, but it is not, the uptake is very minimum and because of several reasons associated with that. So how do we facilitate that process in the field? We had a kind of a farmer level and farm level insurance pilots, but it is not upscaled to the level of adoption and it has not mainstreamed into the system as well. So that another aspect we need to see. And throughout the process, major learning is how the technology can be taken to the field. That is the process. And the second one is how to address the social norms. Because as we have seen from Govindamal's case, there are many women farmers now, the social norms are almost, we were able to overcome to an extent in taking up as a women farmer or getting into the next level of initiatives. But the system seems to be in place. Then the most important point to reduce the whether it is a climate risk or due to this kind of weather-related one, the ecosystem services. The ecosystem services play a major role, which is again into the common properties. So where the investments are very limited, especially if you are taking the tanks. In almost all the tanks are in the degraded condition. Very minimum number of tanks are now restored through the government programs and also some CSR investments are going on there. So unless otherwise we build the ecosystem services which are very essential for agriculture, including the groundwater, then your natural flora and fauna, because that provide the pest regulation services, pollination services to the field. These are all external items which is coming and affecting the yield apart from the own production systems. So investments on such ecological services are need of the art. It is going on, but still it needs to be science-based, system-based, so that the sustainability can be ensured in that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So here again, I would say that what Dr. Rangalakshmi talked about highlighted some of the issues which are related to ecosystem-based services. And when it comes to the assets, the village level, the community assets and all, the climate proofing is also one of the important aspects which usually is not really taken into consideration. Having said that, a lot of work really is done by NABARD, and I think NABARD is one of the largest, having largest number of projects, especially when it comes to the climate adaptation, watershed management, and we are supporting quite a lot of such projects. And the experience is quite wide, and so we really look forward to hearing from you your insights, specifically when it comes to women farmers, the issues in terms of the challenges or the limitations in terms of the participation, how through these projects you are really trying to encourage their participation, their voice to be heard. So over to you, Dr. Asian.
Thank you for giving us an opportunity to share. You said anything that the government not here. But nonetheless, Symposia has been a major player in agri, rural development, and supports women development also. Climate change is a reality, and I think we are facing the consequences of that. And Dr. Vijay has given a very elaborate presentation, and which has set the tone for today's discussion. What we have observed, I think all of us have observed this, the major effects of climate change has been on children. And now all of us are discussing, in fact, Govindaman is an exception. And not all women farmers have been lucky like them. Maybe thanks to like a developmental partner like MSSR, who have been very working very actively. They are a good partner of Nagar also for now. And because what we see is that the men folk made it when there's a problem of resources. They made it and they will not come back for several months also. That also happens. Especially in, we see many of our states, northeastern and eastern states, from southern part of India, I'm from Tamil Nadu. So what we see is that many of them come out for labor work. Several months they come and stay there with the bare minimum facilities. Only the objective of earning something and sending back home. That is fine. Taking care of the financial aspects is fine. But what is more important is that the woman in the family, she has to take care of the entire family, the requirements, managing the funds, and everything she has to do. Literally, she plays the role of the husband also, being forward in the house also. In the process, she has to sacrifice a lot. Health is affected, and nutrition is affected. Nutrition is affected because what are limited resources? The Indian mother always wants to give the best for the husband and the children. And if anything is left out, she takes for herself. Or even if she's too tired, she will sacrifice a meal also. That also happens. It happens everywhere, even in the urban families, we see that. So this is a major issue they are facing. And from NABARD point of view, we have certain solutions for climate change, which we have been doing even before we realized climate change effects. Way back in the 90s, we started with the watershed development program. Around more than 3,500 projects we have done across India, which started as a pilot with support from KFW of Germany. And we did it in Gujarat and Maharashtra. And luckily, I joined NABARD during that time. And I had seen the transition of these women from the day one to the year 5, when I was regularly monitoring their activities. In the initial 1 year, we used to see a few women sitting there in the meetings. They never interact. They'll be sitting in the back seat, all faces covered with their so face covered, and they'll not be talking also. And when we came to year 3, we saw the women were running the entire meeting. They used to have a lot of demands. They used to argue on the types of interventions we give and what else they expect. They started thinking and planning for the village, which is normally, I think it is in their gene, it is there for women to think and plan a lot. They think about the society, the neighbor, everybody. Whereas men are normally like, we are like horses. We have our fixed route and we go in that pattern. I'm not offending men, but they have been a lot of we think one at a time. But women do multitasking. So they used to do a lot of activities, and finally those projects became a very good success. Government of India was invited for the projects. They had come and see. Various stakeholders had seen. And then Government of India came out with a project to partially fund NABARD with 100 crores, and NABARD put in 100 crores from its own sources. We created a corpus, and with that a few projects we started. Today, almost 3,500 projects we have done across the country. Similarly, for tribal women and tribal projects also, where women are mainly running the show. Because the challenges they face are one is nutrition, then migration related issues, due to which their workload has increased. And third is that still whether a woman is a decision maker. That is a question I think we have to think. All said and done, even we see in families where the woman runs the show and they are not capable of going for any job also. If the woman is running the show, running SHG, bringing some money and trying to run the family, still she does not have a choice of how to spend many geographies. So that is an area that has to be addressed. So I think with this, sort of solutions will come to this.
Yeah, so I think the challenges we have laid out quite a lot. So I mean, right from Vidya's presentation to what we are really facing. And what happens is like there is a lot of variation to north or from east. Like as I think in the initial presentation as well, or lack of really highlight and positive reviews is enough, which actually can not just provide opportunity for learning others, but also look at the policy implications. And so from that perspective again, coming back to some of the points which we talked, there was a discussion about the digital divide. So, I think a couple of days back, there was a policy brief which was released by ETF. And they actually have just shown that now we are talking about weather-based index and weather-based solutions. Still, the penetration of the mobiles, and especially the smart mobiles, it is quite low. It is quite high on papers, but all are in possession of the main farmers. And women, if they have access, how to use that information is still quite a bit of challenge. And so from that perspective, when we are introducing certain technologies, which actually are aiming to really reduce the tragedy, whether we are really providing the right solutions or not. And that is something which we have to really be very cautious. When we are saying about the second aspect which we talked is as a part of the environment, is collectivization. The SHGs, the LPUs, wherever they really have worked, they have worked wonders. And wherever they have not, they really have not worked. So from that perspective, looking at it as a solution, the farm, non-farm kind of activities, and also looking at the agri-business as one of the solutions where still I think it is yet to be explored and in the whole arena of changing climate. So again, Ruchika, what do you really think? And then also, you just touched upon the post-harvest losses. We talked about women being really custodians of household level food security. So they don't want to compromise it at any point in time. And so if there is advice of changing the crops, probably men are much more willing to make that change as compared to women. However, if there is a slightly less risk kind of decision they have to take, they probably will take it. So given that as a kind of intrinsic again tendency, how these challenges, how some of the solutions can really help in addressing these challenges.
Thanks, Punya. Important questions, and I'll start with what you mentioned last first, recognizing that. But before that, I think any solution that we think about, critical point also to consider is, shouldn't increase the burden on women, essentially, and there are huge implications from a social norm, also what happens with labor, and health issues as well, which is not considered. But from a production farm or non-farm production system, going to a bit of post-harvest management piece, especially with the climate, we know that the climate impacts are there. We need to think about better resilient cropping practices and addressing that. Some of our learnings on the solution side has been how do we think about when we are planning any of this work? How do we think about the entire landscape, which basically means looking at different land use and ownership practices, etc., but also agro principles and other which we mentioned. And we are really planning for that entire landscape and think about interventions within sustainability. We are thinking about sustainable agriculture, region, and whatever you want to get the terminology of it. But what are those interventions? Whether it's about cultivating paddy, if it's about more resilient seed varieties, having that common discussion and narrative building locally and the landscape in discussion with men and women groups together is also critical. Sometimes because of local patriarchy or other issues, India is very diverse and this could change based on which region you are, but that consensus building becomes critical. And why it's critical also is because when the planning is done and then one is informing that using some of the public funding, but also other sources of investments that are there, then there is at least more consensus on why we need to think about, from a solutioning perspective, yes, let's move to a different crop. It will take time. We might, and we heard from Govindam also on that. Sometimes these also because of risk are, impact, climate risks are impacted, but we are at least planning better. Right? And from a, so from the production side, that's one thing I would definitely say we need to look at. From a larger,
while planning for this, the other thing is, and again from a climate perspective, sometimes, and we see that always a lot of, chemical, uh, very chemical intensive farming, farmers are already starting to make, they always grow their food separately. Not a solution we would all like to have better food, but a lot of women farmers especially talk about nutri gardens. So what are those practices and how do we plan in the landscape becomes critical that, the planning is for the entire area and not that, only safe food is being grown, and rest of it is, a bit more complicated which we need to think about. On the post, so rural women farmers, how that presence is building on some of this happens is critical, but also from a food loss and waste or post-harvest management practices, there's a lot of learning that we've seen. And again, this would differ based on whether you're talking about big landholding farmers or small landholders and, what technology you are saying. I mean, for instance, to give an example, huge soybean, cropping systems in Central India, there's a lot of, machinery that might be used for harvesting, etc. What is the role of female labor there? But there are also small landholding systems. So what is the technology? What kind of solutions are we, thinking about? That becomes critical. And from a food, from a, and it goes to a point that Dr. Ingrid mentioned and you were mentioning earlier also. And we're thinking about post-harvest management. What's the best, most, innovative, but technology for women also to think about, harvest management. What is the awareness that's needed? Because a lot of implements, etc., are not necessarily considered and made, thinking about these issues. And how do we also think about women's access and participation? Creating awareness on that. I mean, we tried digital, a lot of phone apps, etc. How many women have access to phones? Changing, of course, yes, we know that. But still, I mean, if we are thinking about advisory services, how are we linking it to, what happens later? So essentially, it's a mix of, I mean, on the food loss and waste side as well as on the production side, it's a mix of things. But really, we need to think about whether are we developing the right kind of post-harvest management technologies which can help in doing that. On the agri-business side, and this is the important one, and some of our learnings of running the land accelerator in South Asia, in India for 4 years, and also, more recently the work that we've done. And I take an example of, farmer producer organizations here. If we are thinking about, just supporting better credit worthiness is important for FPOs to grow. We want to have that larger, livelihood models, like the example that, Government has been able to do. But a lot of FPOs then need finance, easy access to finance. I know there are a lot of incentives that are there, but how are we, does everyone have access? The capacity building issues there again in terms of professionalization of FPOs. What is the business model for agri-business? And those are some of the issues we've been looking at very closely. How do we do support building capacities for, these local user groups, FPOs, etc. How do we link it with, have better access to affordable finance? What is the right, building capacity? That's a very difficult issue, right? We've been all talking about capacity, we need to do that. But what is that innovative way to do it so that it can last longer? So more intentionality when we think about skill building. And this would require, very different sort of modules, I presume, but also post-harvest management, food loss and waste. From an agri-business perspective, how do we think about what that likelihood is a lot of our, what we produce is also informed by consumer choices. So if we have clean food and I go back to my production system example, how you associate it? If we have the market, the consumers are also doing it. How do we sort of train some of the, women farmers, think about it, youth actually, and really think about maybe do that in a more integrated way. So from a policy solution perspective, I mean, there are multiple levers. One is by in the production system, we need to think about landscape, agroecology, or planning needs to think about it, and incentives need to be driven. We need to think about finance. How is that finance being delivered? We need to think about capacity building, and then there are a lot of, that's underneath nuances in terms of, that are able.
Thank you so much. Now I'm just shifting the gears a bit and now moving towards the government schemes or the policies. And so I'm actually coming to you, Dr. Vasiliani. So we know that I mean, the government of India has plethora of schemes which are intending to the smallholder and marginal farmers. A lot of, in fact, schemes also look at the rural development or, I mean, the schemes like NREGA or NRLM. Very specific schemes which you talked about, the insurance schemes, whether it is insurance or PMFPY, the Prime Minister Facility Yoजना. So, in case of those schemes, I mean, I just want to also understand like how much they are really sensitive to the needs of the women farmers and also from the climate angle. Because what we see is like, in a way, the risk insurance is something which in fact provides quite a lot of security in the sense from the climate extreme events perspective. However, the documentation which is required at times that itself keep women farmers out of it. And similarly for the other schemes. So I would really like to hear from you about specific angle of the government schemes and their uptake specifically by women farmers.
As a regards the insurance scheme, I think all of this would agree that it has evolved a lot. The first crop insurance scheme that we came into place, the PM's Fasal Bima Yojana has been refined a lot and made more accessible and also made optional. It is not a mandatory for the farmers to take that. It has been made optional. But nevertheless, there are some issues in that, especially when regarding climate. Because, for example, the weather-based insurance we have, this is a rare case, rare case where the coffee planters, they are going for the scheme was introduced for weather-based insurance. And finally, that particular year, there was a very erratic rainfall, so crops failed. And when they went to their claims, the company rejected. The simple reason was that annual rainfall has been normal. So, but it is not the average annual rainfall that is to be taken. It is the seasonality of the rain, like what Gundaman was telling. When the paddy was in fruiting stage, there was a rain, and crop loss was 50%. So, but these things, it has challenges. It's a huge challenge because different crops, different varieties, they have different growing cycles and other things. So, probably now still the refinement is going on. Government is also thinking in those lines. Probably a day will come soon where we may have to deploy AI in solving these issues, settlement of claims also, wherein maybe without human intervention, if a claim can be processed and settled and on real-time basis. That is a dream. That is a dream we have, and I think it should happen. If not soon, maybe in the near future, it should happen. Apart from this, now coming to NRL, since you had mentioned NRL, there is a lot of focus now that any development project has to be considered. This has been recognized by the political fraternity also, irrespective of the states. Now, every elections we see also the type of promises made or considered, because that is what is going to need something. Otherwise, it is like going on the way. So there is a lot of focus on NRL. For women in NRL and especially the luxury schemes. So, though it was a very ambitious statement made by our Honorable Prime Minister, I think it has been adopted in full force, and all players are playing their own practice are ready to finance, and it is going on. But that has to be made a success. That has to be made sustainable. And for that, continuous support, guidance, and training is also essential, which places like NABARD we work, we don't directly provide training, we work through civil society organizations like NSSRF and other HUs and other government training institutions also like our cities. So we are doing this. And so that is going to also help in a long way. And apart from this, empowerment of women is very important. The self-group movement has matured a lot from what it was in the early days. Now it is doing substantially well. But there's still movement of the people from just consumption roles to taking into place. So that is the focus now. And we are also doing a lot of projects on that, on enterprise development. And similarly, NRLM is also doing, and the various state governments also is doing that. So that women are properly trained and so that they can be business leaders on their own without depending on others. And thirdly, there is also this FPO movement where we see that wherever it is women majority FPOs, they are very good in their performance. Be it the processing and all these activities, we are seeing various types of FPOs. And we being the major lender for FPOs also, we have a subsidiary in Artisan Finance. I was lucky to be part of that for a few years. And every year, around 700 to 800 FPOs are being financed. The banking fraternity is not yet fully getting into financing of FPOs, where they expect a FPO to be at least 3 years old to finance. But I think for an organization like an FPO, where 500,000 people are coming together, expecting them to run the show for 3 years without any financial support is not correct. So they have to have some initial seed funding for them to take up the activities. So we have done a lot. Of course, we have better figures to some extent with a few projects. Not but that's very insignificant. But the models that have happened are really substantial. And what we see is the main dominant FPOs are primarily interested in procurement and sale. Sale of produce and procurement of inputs, procurement and sale of inputs mostly. Whereas women-led FPOs, what we see is they are more interested in packaging or primary processing and such things, which is what is intended. What we are trying to tell the farmers all these years is, you just don't sell your produce, go for processing. And that in women-led FPOs we are seeing more. And just now, was also telling about the processing they are doing. I think they are in the right direction. And probably this is sensed by the policymakers also. That is why whatever policies are coming also are women-centric. SCG movement is was there only because women have more responsible in having the and managing funds. So I think the things happening and future also has a lot in place. And we also we are working in this direction. I think this is the policy.
Thank you so much. And so I think, what we can do is open the forum for some questions. Hear from audience your questions or your comments, and then we can again come back to the panel. So over to audience. I would request you to please introduce yourself and then.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So my name is Mimi. I work with Kolu, Food and Land Use Tradition. So my question is to Govinda. Now the Kerala is தமிழ் மொழி என்ன சொல்றது நல்லாவே புரியுது. கொஞ்சம் கஷ்டம் ஆனாலும் கேட்பேன். உண்மை சொல்லிட்டு விவசாயத்துக்கு தான் அப்படியே விவசாயத்துக்கு போக மாட்டேன் அப்படி அங்கே இருக்கீங்க. எனக்கு என்னோட கேள்வி என்னன்னா, உங்க சின்ன பொண்ணு இல்லையா, அவங்களும் இதே நினைப்பாங்க. அவங்க விவசாயத்துக்கு வர்றாங்களா இல்லையா? ஒரு வார்த்தை ஒரு வார்த்தை. ஆனா இன்னொரு வார்த்தை உங்க FPO FPO தான் chairman directors எல்லாருமே புருஷன் அவங்களுக்கு தான் இருக்கும். ஆனா உங்க CEO அக்கௌண்டன்ட் அவரும் பெண்களா
CEO ஏற்கனவே இருந்தது ஆண்கள் இப்ப பெண்கள்.
Another question is to actually you are telling when we are beginning the opportunity.
Should we first translate this and then go to
Oh,
the
right.
next?
I think you already answered the question.
She's done.
So my question is, the young women are still interested to come to agriculture. That is one. And the second one, whether the leaders of the FPO, I mean, especially the directors, CEO, accountant, are women. So her answer is yes, the young women are interested. They are coming into agriculture, but again, we need to explore further because education plays a major role in deciding the livelihood options. That is one. And the second question, yes, earlier it was men, now it is women.
My question is actually India is producing right now. India is producing 593 grams of grain per capita. ICMR is recommending 50 grams per day. We are producing 100% more than what we need right now. But in our consideration also, and it is getting close, we cannot trust the data blindly. As you know, in journals, papers also showing about these 100 million grains where they are going. So my question is, and especially in the case of organizational agriculture, as Dr. Vijaya was pointing out, can't we focus more on nutri-gardens kind of narrative rather than producing more? So the agriculture system, we can be shifted the narrative to that side. Of course, nutri-garden is not sufficient because after a long time, we just spending less than people around food right now, as per the last report. So they need money to fulfill other ambitions, aspirations, like plans in life. We need. But even then, produce more, we need this. Right?
Thanks, thanks for the question. See, I think to answer the question, I'll probably attempt from point of view of nutrition security because that's the goal, right? So more nutrition, whether it's nutri-gardens or diversification. On the question of food grains, yes, the surplus is there and there's like stocks available and that's for EDS and that's for like, Food Act, etc. But the strategy of India's policy has been crop diversification, moving out of cereals. So we were very cereal staple grain centric, but as the policy is shifting now towards more crop diversification, being self-reliant in pulses also, for example, right? Because the demand patterns are shifting in the country. So at the macro level, there is demand, there is therefore, pulses, meat, fish, poultry, dairy, and we still need to become, we need to produce a lot more to, get to that demand. So that is the macro scale. And nutri-gardens are a more localized solution. So they can supplement the existing market into, because, India, all said and done, almost most of the parts of the country are market linked. Farmers are like consumers now, so they are actually buying food from the markets. So therefore, it becomes very important what you're providing in the markets, and that is linked to what you produce at large scale, right? But then nutri-gardens support, specific interventions. So if you're thinking of iron deficiency or zinc deficiency, things like that, and then nutri-gardens play an important role. But again, there is literature to show that it enhances women's burden again, because women are again responsible for taking care of that nutrition. That's true. That started in Sub-Saharan Africa, that is also started in different contexts in South Asia. So there are trade-offs for nutri-gardens, and in some cases they happen to work. Hope that answers the question.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shatrupa and I represent Grameen Foundation India. So Grameen is a global organization and we lead with gender and we use a lot of technology and financial products for the smallholder farmers as well as for the FPOs. So I don't have any question, but just to add to this discussion, since agriculture is season bound and we need to take right decision at the right time. And considering 80% rural women are into agriculture, so right now what we are doing, we are creating women agri-entrepreneurs. And that's a sustainable model and they are, and considering the climate risk, and they are supporting the smallholder farmers in paid service in terms of plant doctor, soil doctor, then gap service provider, which is good agricultural practices. And also digitally we are onboarding these agri-entrepreneurs and they are supporting the smallholder farmers in trading of their products and getting input at right time, and they are taking the entrepreneurs are taking incentives for that. And at the same time, with FPOs, we are working with close to 80 FPOs and we have some of the 100% women FPOs. And we are also introducing the component of blended finance and we are digitally onboarding the FPOs in our digital platform to get the market access and the financial service provider. And I hope this type of information will definitely help the smallholder farmers considering the family. Thank you.
Arjun.
Thank you, panel, for wonderful insights on the women farmers. So I'm Archana Chatterjee, working with IUCN. So IUCN's focus is more on conservation, as you all would be knowing. But right now, I mean, more and more we are focusing on how to transform agriculture towards sustainable route, because that is one of the biggest destroyers of biodiversity, animal biodiversity habitats. So our focus is on agriculture in and around high biodiversity areas, like protected areas, and how this can be made more sustainable. My question is to Sir Mama, that how can women farmers also benefit from the emerging carbon markets, which are, so the agriculture projects are also now entering the carbon markets. And the other question was that is NABARD working on providing some insurance solutions, especially for women, to mitigate the human-wildlife conflict, because that is a very big, factor in some of the biodiversity areas where this is very prominent, and very big loss to biodiversity also being faced.
As regards carbon market, I think, in India we have a carbon market was not fully developed, but now things are in place. And now recently, a couple of months back, NABARD and Government of India, we have signed an MOU, and we have developed a voluntary carbon market framework. So that is there, and already some projects have started rolling out. Where people who are taking up activities where the compensation is taking place. So further the compensation part, there is a carbon market part is taken care of. And Government of India is also committed towards this, that making it more broad-based so that our farmers will benefit. And one of our subsidiaries, NABARD Consultancy Services, who is also have, they have a separate agreement with the Government of India, and they are taking up the projects across India. So, this being a state subject, the state governments have to get into it. They have to create a policy for that, so that in those states it will be. For example, in Karnataka, they are doing it. And similarly, wherever states they can, once they come on board, it can be done. And I think there is a future also. Climate change brings a lot of challenges. That is where there is some possibility of some compensation for the farmers who are be it women or it is very beneficial to them. That is in the right way. It will happen. So, regarding insurance, NABARD essentially don't do anything on insurance because there is a separate dedicated stream of insurance companies, including agriculture insurance corporation. I think this wildlife thing is a big challenge. In fact, I have noted down as one of the challenges for the future because it is both are important. Humans are also important and animals are also important. But how we protect both from each other, that is very important. And I have been working in Bangalore as a state government manager, so Nilgiris was practiced. And in Nilgiris as well as in parts of Bangalore, forming the Western Ghats, this conflict, especially the elephant and leopards issue, tiger issues were there. And women are the berserkers. They go for some farm work and they are attacked. So this is the conflict that is there. But this is an area which where you cannot wish it away. But it is there's only one authority for that, where they have the forest department. So they are working on it. There are issues because normally they don't let it go that easy. But there has to be some way of empowering people to take some decisions so that they can protect themselves from wilderness. Similar to what we had in joint forest management, a similar measure for animal conflict also has to be there. I think that is one of the reasons for policy.
I just want to add, actually, I mean, this issue is becoming much more prominent, I think, across India, because in Assam where we are working, I mean, huge issues and very big, substantial amount of loss is being incurred by the farmers because of the rains. Because when they come in a big herd. However, there are some solutions which are very small scale and not yet really have come to that scale-up phase are being really tried out. And starting from, of course, the fencing, which is more of a kind of, I would say, racing approach, to actually creating the elephant corridors and really helping them to be there, but not really destroy the food or the crop. So there are some of those efforts, but probably we need more examples to really inform the policy. The second issue is that these losses and these, crop destruction is not covered under the insurance schemes at this point in time, and there is a lot of scope for really advocacy to include that as a part of it. We have the climate triggers, which actually are impacting the or rather helping the insurance, but not the human wildlife conflict. So I think that is something which probably needs to be really advocated. So, yes.
That for elephants, even beekeeping is one of.
So I don't have any question, but I have to add to the panel, some panel discussions. I am R.A.S. Patel, additional counsel from the Government of India. The Government of India is implementing several schemes for the climate resilient agriculture. One of the most important is the rain-fed area development, in which we promote integrated farming system. So if rain-fed area is there and there is climate shift in the rain-fed area. So with the help of CREDA, we have also developed a district agriculture contingency plan. So that is available on the websites in the public domain to the CREDA as well as to the district headquarters, and also it is available at block levels. So farmers can get, if there is a departure of rainfall due to climate change scenario, so these farmers can choose the crops, varieties, and all those things. At the same time, Indian Council of Agriculture Research have developed almost 2,570 climate resilient varieties across the countries which can be used for this climate resilience in the agriculture sector by use of those varieties. That will also include the drought resistant varieties are there, flood resistant varieties are there. So that can be used. At the same time, this climate change also affects this water resource. That is the one of the major challenge for the irrigation sectors, because this agricultural sector utilizes about 80% of the water available for the irrigation. So we have implementing per drop more crop, one of the major schemes which promotes micro irrigation system. So, Madam, this Govindan Mallu said that she has one well and she has recently renovated that. So she can get the benefit of this per drop more crop in the states of Tamil Nadu, and we are providing 55% this subsidy from the government of India and state governments, and government of Tamil Nadu are also giving some additional top up on the this government subsidy, and I think it is 90%, if I'm not remember. Is 90%, I think, in the state of Tamil Nadu, they providing the subsidy for the opting this micro irrigation system in the Tamil Nadu. 55% from the government of India and state government, and some are subsidies given by the state governments. And these at the same time, we have also several schemes, and like we have introduced Krishi Shakti recently. Krishi Shakti, which will be available at villages, this block level and village levels. So she can go in the villages and teach to the women for how they will come up with the hope of the climate change. So all the things are, and as Prime Minister also have introduced drone release for the application of drones. They are getting the trainings and how to operate the drones in the this assessing the crop loss and etc. And also for the insecticide application of insecticides and pesticides. So these are the additions from my side.
Thank you so much. So maybe last question, I can see lots of hands up, but maybe you can be very quick. I'm just looking at the hands.
Good evening, all. My name is Sylvancy. I am from Down Foundation, India. We are working in around 17 states of India towards poverty eradication. So out of 48 lakhs poor people, 10 lakhs are women members. So here my question is to SR of Lakshmi Madam. So as a pilot, we are doing climate resilience centers at block level. They are doing the climate resilience technology usage through WhatsApp groups and the community radio for the farmers and also some virtual farmers field school also. So there are 100 resilience centers, 100 women with us, like volunteers are doing are facilitating this resilience center. So is it possible?
Ask the question.
Yes, is it possible to promote this type of climate resilience center at block level with support of government or NGO? That is my first question. And second question to Govindamma. So there are many schemes available in the government. So அவங்களுக்காக சரி ஸ்பீக் இன் தமிழ். ஸோ நிறைய கவர்மெண்ட்ல நிறைய ஸ்கீம்ஸ் எல்லாம் இருக்கு இல்லையா? ஸோ நம்ம உமன் பெண் விவசாயியா வந்து நம்ம எத்தனை பேர் அந்த மாதிரியான கவர்மெண்ட் ஸ்கீம்ஸ் போய் அனுப்புறோம்? So is it possible to reach the government scheme with the by women farmers? Thank you.
I think we can take one more question and then.
Yes. So my question to you is about you mentioned that there have been observations around that wherever the women FPOs are going, they are mostly processing and packaging was the scheme and mostly the regulations of produce and the input. Is there any behavioral pattern which is leading them to decide these type of activities? And you also mentioned that they are performing much better. So what are those factors that are driving the success of the women FPOs and not of the otherwise the case? And one people which we around when you said that you did one of the cases that you shared around the agroecology practices, where women's behavior is tended towards like they are thinking of the food as a part of the agroecology, whereas the men is still around the timber. Is it just the money that they are getting out of it? The timber is driving their behavior, or in your study did you come across any other behavioral patterns or the factors which is leading to this decision? So yeah, these two questions. Thank you.
Thank you. The question of climate resilience center at the block level is we have experience in facilitating resilience at the village level. Because these changes when we are working with these vulnerable communities, vulnerability from different perspectives, including climate. So in that context, the close facilitation is essential for them to shift to some of the changes in the technologies. Especially we worked in Orissa, Assam, in different climate hotspots, and also Tamil Nadu, certain places we worked. Our major learning is we need to closely work with women farmers, then only the change can happen. That is one. And second, when they are ready to make the changes and they are practicing the changes, then you can take them to the next level of the learning. Especially the self-learning process you can start, and there the digital arts and other things may work. But this should be a kind of a step-by-step process.
Regarding the women FPOs, which I told that, it is the same experience as that in SCG's model. Because normally they work together collectively. They set objectives and they follow their objectives. I don't say that the men FPOs don't do well, but women do better. And in many FPOs, where we see problems is when the fund position improves or when the activities keep expanding, then politics stays. They start fighting. And you are right, that issue comes up.
Economic value brings in the men as well.
Yeah, that brings in. So when you know, promoting FPOs, we started telling that once you get money, that happens everywhere. You take even the movie industry, most of them are properties. Even their associations, they start fighting and they have money. Within them, they start fighting. So money makes things politics. But fortunately, in women-centered FPOs, what we see is that they are clearly their objectives and they work towards their objectives. That is what happens. What was the second one?
Right. So thanks for the question. On terms of the prioritization, this came in context of the restoration opportunity assessment that we were doing in education. Because we were looking at restoration and, what are the benefits. So people, when the example of food came, example of timber came, which is, you kind of linked it to the income piece. May also prioritize biodiversity. And there's a caste layer there in terms of an upper caste. So that's where the intersectionality comes in. Some of the upper caste men actually, were more talking about biodiversity, for instance. Others were talking about timber. And women, at least in the cohorts that we were talking to, mostly spoke about food nutrition security. I don't think so we can make a sort of a larger blanket statement that, this is how our behavioral normal change would be. As I said, and I'll go back to all of this when we're doing planning, interventions, agriculture, restoration, etc. Some of this is negotiated locally, right? So at least being conscious of what that is and then planning interventions around it. That was my point, but I don't think we can really say it's one way or the other. Yeah.
நாங்க விதையெல்லாம் அரசு திட்டங்கள் நாங்க நிறைய பயன்படுத்தியிருக்கோம். நாங்க விதை வாங்குறது போனோம்னா மானியத்துல கொடுப்பாங்க. அப்போ வந்து ஆதார் கார்டு, விவசாய அட்டை இது ரெண்டுத்தையும் எடுத்துட்டு போய் நாங்க அவங்க பதிவு பண்ணிட்டு மானிய விலையில விதையை வாங்கிட்டே போவோம். அது கூட வந்து எங்களுக்கு எவ்வளவு கொடுப்பாங்க. இந்த மருந்து அது ஆர்கானிக் மருந்து வந்து யூரியா அந்த பாட்டில் அந்த சூடாமணசு இதெல்லாம் கொடுப்பாங்க. சென்சிட்டிவ் பண்ணி போட சொல்லி அது எல்லாமே வாங்கிட்டு இருக்கோம். அது இந்த சொட்டு நீர் மேலே வர்ற பழுப்பு கரும்புகளுக்கு போட்டு இறங்கிட்டு வாங்கியிருக்கோம். அது வாங்குறதுக்கு போனோம்னா சிட்டா, ஆதார் கார்டு, எங்களோட நிலத்தோட எந்த இடத்துல நீங்க கரும்பு போட வாங்கிட்டு வாங்கிக்கணும். இது எல்லாத்தையும் எடுத்துட்டு போய் கொடுத்தோம்னா அவங்க அதுக்கேற்ற மாதிரி பதிவு பண்ணி ஒரு 30 நாள்ல எங்களுக்கு மறுபடியும் கருத்து எடுத்து வந்து எங்க வீட்டில் வந்து ஏற்றி போக சொல்லுவாங்க. நாங்கள் போயிட்டு ஏற்றி வைக்கணும். ஏற்றி வந்து அந்த மாதிரி நாங்கள் போட்டுருக்கோம். அவங்க கேட்டாங்க, மேடம் கேட்டாங்க என்னோட கேள்வி, உங்களால வந்து விவசாயம் பண்ணணுமா, உங்க பசங்க தொடருமான்னு கேட்டாங்க. நம்ம எல்லாரும் ஆரோக்கியத்தோட உணவு சாப்பிடணும். எங்களோட விவசாயம் பண்ணிச்சுன்னா அது எப்படி எல்லாரும் ஆரோக்கியமா உணவு சாப்பிடுங்க. விவசாயம் உணர்ந்தாதான் எல்லாரும் ஆரோக்கியமான உணவு விவசாயத்தை விளைஞ்சி எடுத்து வந்து எது இருந்தாலும் நம்மளால உயர்ந்து வாழ முடியும். உணவு இருந்தா மட்டும்தான் நம்மளால உயர முடியும், ஆரோக்கியமா வாழ முடியும். அதாவது எங்களோட பசங்களும் விவசாயத்தை இப்பயே நாங்க என்ன செய்யணுமோ அதை கூட கற்றுக்கிறோம். எங்களால வந்து அவங்க கூட அவங்க ஸ்கூல் போன டைம் தவிர மீதி டைம் எங்களால வந்து ஒத்துழைப்பாங்க. நாங்கள் செஞ்சுட்டு அவங்க கற்றுக் கொடுத்துருக்கோம். நாங்கள் போயிட்டாலும் அதுக்கப்புறம் எங்க பிள்ளைங்க அந்த விவசாயத்தை விடாத வராதுன்னு அவங்களுக்கு நாங்கள் இப்பயே கற்றுக் கொடுத்துருக்கோம்.
One is about the inputs and other government schemes accessing. She said that they have been doing it for seeds, some of the fertilizers and biological inputs, drip irrigation system, mulching sheet. Those are the government schemes they are accessing. That is one. And second, with reference to the younger generation participation in agriculture, she is telling that they have been training their daughters to be part of agriculture and they are involving them in the whole process. And the agriculture should not stop with our generation. Definitely, it should go to the next generation as well, so that we all will get food.
I think possibly that is a great recommendation which is coming from government. So maybe just in 1 or 2 minutes, which we have now. So I would just request all the panel members if there is 1 or 2 recommendations that you want to really provide for improving the status of women and role of women in building climate resilience, or vice versa, like how women can actually play changes in building the climate resilience among the society. So it's 1 or 2 points.
And both the ways, the women participation is quite important because of the changes in the relations and structure in the villages. So from that perspective, when we are talking about again vulnerable communities, definitely hand-holding approach, the co-development and co-innovation process is necessary for them to take it to the next level. Based on other experiences across different agro-ecologies, there should be a kind of a starting point for the women to get into the next level of land.
I think all the planning should be geographically watershed based and demographically women based. I think that will cover the entire thing.
That's an interesting punchline.
Similar, I think when you're thinking about policies and access to finance, at least from an agriculture production system perspective, better landscape, agroecological planning, how do we think about incentives? But also, how are we promoting agri entrepreneurs, FPOs, etc., access to finance, whether it's solar drying, just, processing or whatever that might be. That needs to be thought through. Second is on tech and innovations. We really need to think about how that is more adaptable and can be used by everyone. So, and the last one is, and I know I've said this multiple times, we really need intentionality. A lot of what we say will increase labor, and how are we doing that? I don't think we're thinking about it. And that would really require thinking about things very differently.
So thank you so much. I think this has been a great discussion and great panel. I think we have really got great insights from each one of you. The last sentence that I want to really again say what Dr. Patel has actually said. So there are, lots of schemes which are there. So how we leverage those schemes for the women farmers advantage, and also then look at how the policy framework can further become stronger to support the women farmers as well as building the climate resilience among the community. So thank you so much, and over to you, and thanks for patiently waiting for us. Over to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Karna, and thank you to all the esteemed panelists. I think this was an excellent discussion. All of us have gained a lot, and also, I'm sure, feeling stimulated, thinking, and also, wondering over what we've heard. So with this, I would like to now enter the concluding part of the symposium. We have a short video that we'd like to play. This is a couple of farmer voices from Assam, where the Norwegian embassy and WFP are collaborating on a project which empowers women farmers building their climate resilience. So a short video, and then we will move to the concluding remarks. I would request the video to be played, please.
It's fine. You'll have to just turn to watch it.
I think we can. Yeah, maybe we'll move and come back so that you can again. That might be good.
And now I would like to invite Masumi to do the concluding remarks, please.
Thank you very much. I learned quite a lot and then really enjoyed the very lively discussion. So thank you very much for all the contributions. I feel like Radhika, you did my job to conclude the panel very well, so I don't want to re-conclude. But we started to hear a lot of sort of paradox or dilemmas, right? We have more and more, increasing the burden, and then at the same time, climate change is adding the burden, and there are some technologies that will resolve these climate change challenges. But in order for the women to adapt to these new technologies, there is more and more things that we have to do. So how can we resolve that kind of? And then also there is a question of how much of it can be top down, how much can be bottom up, etc. And then there are some menus already, sort of options already available there. The technologies we talked about, post-harvest handling, the climate service advisories, also the irrigation. There are many technologies available. Financial part, we have some different types of finance, including the insurance schemes, even we talked about the carbon credit. So again, there are many options available. And then of course the capacity building trainings. So those are all out there now. How we can put these things through the women's lens and put women as a center, and so that these can be best utilized and accepted, adapted to their respective content is something that all the panel members stress quite a bit. But I learned is like it has to be a 5-year process. You start engaging in year 3, you finally start to see the women are getting ready to start talking a little bit more in your meetings. I heard similar things from Mrs. Arendt as well. You need to have the readiness there. You have to build the trust, etc. So the long-term thinking, more local context, and then our willingness to facilitate and bridge between them. And so those are really coming up as a very strong, message. One last point that forward-looking, I also started here ideas of we should not just put that context of there are givers of the new ideas and the women are receivers. That's too one-sided, right? But I've heard that the women have their own strength in terms of their consistency, sticking to the objectives, very diligent, hardworking. But also, if we look at the commercial market, etc., you mentioned that the producers can also influence the market and vice versa. Even looking at the market, I'm sure the women's choices and preferences have huge, say on that. And I also remember that the mentioned earlier that, that's why it's important that the women are put in the policymakers' role as well. Women shouldn't be just a receiver, but then they should be the one that their voice should be there from the beginning. So at the policy level and the technology level, I heard of the terminology talking about co-development and co-innovation. So women has to play the role in that arena, not just as the recipient of the support. That is how I can summarize this, but it has been really rich, and I don't think I have done a lot of justice, but thank you very much. It was really enriching and enlightening discussion.
Thank you, Masumi. I would now like to request Lynn, if you can give everybody good thanks.
Yes, it's truly a grateful task to thank you all for today's event. First of all, let me extend my gratitude to our expert panel and Dr. Vemiredi, and especially Ms. Govinama for sharing their essential knowledge on solutions for female farmers in building crop resilience. Thank you to all the participants here today for your presence and your engagement and your discussions and questions, which of course proves the importance of having this conversation. I want to extend my deepest appreciation and encouragement to all the women farmers whose resilience and wisdom inspire us in our discussions. And of course, a great thank you also to the Work Food Program for the great collaboration and the work you've been doing in setting up this symposium along with us today. So let's continue to strive for a sustainable future for female farmers, and thank you all again for today.
Thank you. I would like to request Lynn and Rosemary to please come forward. We have some gifts for the speakers. I would request you to felicitate the speakers. May I request the speakers to also please come up. Professor Vivinity. Dr. Venkateshwar.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Ms. Govindamai. Dr. Ruchika Singh. Mr. Vasina.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone. I would like to request all of you to kindly join us for a group photograph, and following that, please tune on for some tea, coffee and refreshments. Thank you.
Here. Here. And we're going to be outside the lecture.
That's also good idea. That's a good idea.
Outside is better. Okay. Yeah. So we go outside.
See you.